Hello, everybody. Welcome back to your favorite spiritual podcast, High Vibin' It. We're really excited to be here with you guys today, and we have a special guest to bring a little magic to your earbuds, a little magic to the start of your week. Her name is Alyse Bacine, and she's awesome. She actually did an Akashic record reading for myself and for Lindsay to kind of help us know like where we're going, what's in our way, that type of thing. And it was very spot on, very magical. She's also a spiritual mentor and a trauma alchemist. So I'm really excited to have her on today. Alyse, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes.
So go ahead. Do you want to say something else?
Go for it.
Gotta go for it. Okay. Hi, Alyse. Hi. I had so much
Hi.
fun. Well, I don't know if fun's the right word, but it was no, if fun's the right word, but it was a great session. And I really came away from it feeling, and I think I messaged you a couple days later, just like, I feel weird like in a good way. And I like things where I can kind of feel it in my body. And that is, and when I say that, I say it's very hard for me to have that bodily connection, as I'm sure a lot of listeners can relate to this. It's hard for me to really gauge the sensation. So when I was able to do that from what I would presume was the session with you and clearing some of that energy and really allowing that release, it was really eye-opening to me to be like, oh my gosh, like this is legit. And it was crazy. It's not that I didn't think it was, but you know how it's just when you feel it, it's like, oh, okay, this is real. And I know this feeling secondhand because a lot of my clients will relate something similar when they realize that their mind is starting to shift and like, oh, okay, so it does work, but it is interesting to be on the other side of it in such a big way. But I kind of want to go into what brought you, like, I know a little bit of your story because we talked, but for people that don't know, what kind of brought you into this world of Akashic reading and really wanting to be that person for people?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's kind of just been a lifelong journey. I've always been able to tap into energy in a very potent and like different way than other people. And, for a lot of my younger years, probably up until the last few years, I didn't really know how to work with it and I would get overwhelmed by it. And I always just knew things and I didn't know how I knew them, and I was always just the person that everyone would come to for advice and help and all of these things. And I always just knew like exactly what was happening with someone. Or, you've probably heard me mention I was a school counselor for 10 years. And I would just know things about kids and then their parents. And I was joking the other night, I worked at a school for 7 years that was bilingual, and many of the parents only spoke Spanish. And I never learned Spanish, but I could literally sit in a meeting with people only speaking Spanish. And like, I knew exactly what they were saying, not because that I knew Spanish. I just could like tap into the energy and know. And it kind of sucks because I was like, well, I really wish I would have learned Spanish, but I could just tune into the energy and feel and know exactly what everyone was saying. And I could respond to them in English and say exactly what I needed to say.
That is so funny.
Yeah, so I think I've kind of always been doing it, but then in 2019, I really felt a very strong pull to shift my life and stop being a school counselor because I knew that I was able to help people in such a more profound way than what I was able to do as a school counselor. So I started working with a coach and quickly realized I needed to start my business. And I thought it was initially just going to be about breath work because breath work is something I learned at 19 and I did extensive training in it and I always taught it. But it quickly evolved into all these other things as I started to really understand and learn how to work with my gifts. So, it just kind of quantum leaped in 2021 and it's still growing. And here we are.
Cool story. I love that. It's funny how you think like, oh, this is my thing. And then that just evolves into like a totally, I mean, like somewhat similar, but totally more broad or different or just unexpected path. You're like, oh, interesting how it all unfolds. But that's really cool that you're a counselor. It makes sense based on your vibe. You definitely have like a nice like space holdingness about you.
Yeah, it was definitely something that I think I was meant to do for that time, because it was kind of like this merging of, my natural gifts and abilities to understand trauma, but then also having like 10 years of this firsthand experience with working with traumatized children. It kind of just came together now. So I have like the actual experience and, just the gifts that I work with.
Yeah. Can you go into a little, and I'm kind of just being very conscious of the fact that there might be one or two people listening that don't know what Akashic records are or are very unfamiliar with this whole thing. So if you're listening to our podcast, you probably do. But just in case, if you don't, what are the Akashic records and how, I guess, I don't know what the second part of the question is, if there even is one, but if you could go into like how you can tap into that, however it fits like naturally. But just first, what are the Akashic records?
Yes. So I describe the records as a living library of everything that's ever occurred in the universe, everything that will ever occur in the universe.
As if time is real. Let's just pretend for a second.
Right.
That it's real.
So, and then specifically, if I'm reading your Akashic records, I'm going to be tapping into the evolution of your soul, everything that you have experienced, everything that you're wanting to experience. And the way that I tap into it, I like to describe it as I'm tuning into a frequency of energy. So the Akashic records are kind of just living in this dimension, in this frequency of energy. And it's almost like tuning a radio station, and I can just tap into it. And then when I tap into it, I get information in the form of feelings, visions, words, and then I just translate that for you into words. And then, for me specifically, like I think I explained to you before, I always see what is the next step in the evolution of your soul? Like, what is your soul wanting to step into? And then I'll always see what is standing between you and stepping into that version of yourself. So what is the trauma, the belief, the block, whatever you want to call it, that's standing in the way? And then through the records, we can channel energy work to shift that block or belief instantaneously so that it will shift and you'll experience a shift in your energy and your perspective in the moment. So the records can be used for a lot of things like shifting energy. Also, the records hold a very high frequency of truth. So you're never going to get misled in the records. You can always go in and ask a question and you will get the truth. And additionally, anyone can tap into the records. I think some people are obviously more interested or inept than others, but anybody can do it.
Hey, good answer, because that kind of leads me into the next question. And Kelsey, please jump in. I just can't see you, so it's hard to know if you're like waiting to talk. But if you are, definitely just cut me off.
I was going to ask the same question that you're about to ask, which is, how does one begin
Yes.
tapping into their own Akashic records? Because now I'm sure everyone's like, ooh, this sounds really resourceful. I want to try.
This is why we're such a good team, Kels.
So it really depends on A, like your interest level, and B, how far you want to go with it, because you could start tapping into your own Akashic records just by reading a book about it. You could take there's many different like do-it-yourself online courses that you can do to learn how to just tap into your own records. And then, there's so many different programs and trainings that you could do to learn how to read other people's records, to learn how to do different clearings in the records. So it really depends on your interest level and what you're using it for. It could be as little as reading a book and as much as taking like a year-long certification program. So it really just kind of depends on what you want and what you're going to use the records for.
Now, I agree with you that anybody can do it. I believe that we all have within us the ability to be, to tap into those psychic, whatever you want to call it, psychic or intuitive or spiritual guide, however you want to say it. We all have that ability to do that. I want to ask with Akashic record, particularly, what is the biggest, well, I guess with anything, what is the biggest factor to be able to do it well? I know what I would imagine it to be, but what's your perspective? What is the biggest factor to be able to actually do this and know that what's coming through is, legit?
Yeah. So two things I would say. I mean, I think obviously it would be somebody who has a natural ability to be in tune, be intuitive, read energy, and just naturally is more inept in that way.
Yeah.
And then also I would say somebody that has done a lot of inner work, because the more that we have different traumas or programming or old belief systems or any of the muck that we pick up just from being a human on planet Earth, a lot of that can really get in the way of being a clear channel. So I would say you have to be willing to do the inner work and make those inner shifts so that none of that stuff interferes with the information that you're receiving.
Yeah. And I would also imagine trust, if you're not trusting yourself and the ability, it's a non-starter. Everything that comes through, you're going to be like, is that right? Is that real? Am I just making that up? Is that coming from my imagination? That sort of thing, which we all do, I'm sure. But I think that level of like, no, if I've put the intention out and I'm getting this back and it feels good, right? I'm just going to say it. And I'm sure you've been in situations where you're like, this makes no sense to me, but I'm going to say it. And then it's just like blows them out of the water, right?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I do think that trust 100%. Yes, it was a game changer for me when I started trusting the information I received. And that is also like oh, wait, did I lose you?
No, I'm here. You froze, but we're still with you. Okay, now I don't hear you.
Okay.
There you are.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
She's
Okay,
back.
I'll go back and say what I said before.
Okay.
So yes, 100% for me, like once I started trusting what was coming through, it was a game changer. And that's when everything opened up for me. And I think trust kind of goes within the umbrella of doing the inner work,
Totally.
because we're kind of programmed to believe that if we can't see something, then it doesn't exist. So we have a lot of doubt around the unseen or around trusting our intuition or our psychic abilities. So once we can kind of dismantle that and start really trusting what we're receiving, then everything kind of shifts.
Great answer.
So let's talk about the inner work, because, okay, I'll use myself as always. I'll sacrifice my own personal story for the sake of everyone listening. When we did our session, since then, I've been very activated and clearing a lot of fear, which to me looks and feels not great, but I know that it's for the best. Right? So can we talk about what you mean by the work for people listening? Because I'm sure there's a bunch of people who are into personal development. They're like, okay, shadow work, I'm supposed to be doing this healing work, but like, what is it? So maybe diving into a little bit of what that looks like, and maybe I can give like examples of what I'm going through too.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So number one, like for when you're really doing like the deep inner work, it's not something you can do on your own. Like, I just want to say that number one, like, and not to say like you need to like, you can't do things on your own. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying it in a disempowering way. I'm saying it in a way that like, in order to do this deeper work and really have the desired shifts, you need support with it, because it can be extremely hard to navigate on your own, to be able to see what is in your subconscious. Because when we're doing the inner work, you're working in your subconscious, and it's basically impossible to know what's in your subconscious without somebody reflecting back to you what they're seeing and then supporting you with unearthing and excavating those deeper belief systems, traumas, old emotions, stuck energy that is living in the subconscious, right? You just need a support system to move through that, not only because it's hard to see, but also because it's uncomfortable, right? So a lot of what we're doing is we're dismantling. First of all, we're acknowledging things that we have not previously acknowledged that are actually true for us, right? So a lot of what we're doing is looking at, okay, well, this is actually how I felt about my mother, for example, right?
You call me out, Alyse? No, just kidding. Because that's exactly what I was just thinking. And that is exactly what we talked about. Your listeners are probably not surprised that that's what came up in my session, but yeah, it's a thing.
Well, and I mean, and that's a common one for a lot of people,
and
right?
Yes,
and I mean,
and
this is
as you're saying it, there are other people like, yup.
Yeah, totally. So what happens is, as a coping mechanism, we either don't fully acknowledge how we actually felt, or we create a story around it to make it better for ourselves. Like, oh, my mom like did the best she could. Oh, I understand why it was like that. Or we have shame around it, and we actually don't even like look at it or acknowledge what it was, because we think that our trauma or our pain or our situation was so bad that no one could ever understand it, and we would scare people by telling them. So we just like hold it down, and we keep like shame around it, which creates a shadow, which then makes it hard for you to like, go to the next level at some point or another, right? You come up against that. Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about when I say doing the inner work. It's first acknowledging things that you haven't acknowledged, and then it's moving through the deeper emotions that are associated with acknowledging those things and actually feeling them, not intellectually pointing them out, but actually feeling them. And that's where you need the support, because that is pretty much, it's very, 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 very difficult to do that on your own, because you need someone. Like I always say to my clients, like, okay, I'm throwing you a life raft, because when you're in the thick of feeling an emotion that you're unearthing that has been suppressed for like 40 years or something like that, and you're now in the thick of it, you think that you're always going to feel this way. You think that life is not worth living, like you're in it, right? And I'm throwing you a life raft saying, hey, you're just feeling this emotion right now. This is how you felt when you were 4. This is not actually who you are. Like you're just feeling it. So I'm like throwing you this life raft, reminding you this is what's happening, so that you can have a bigger perspective and start to make your way out of it. But then when you do, everything shifts. So that's basically, a description of doing the inner work and dismantling belief systems, stories that you have about yourself that you've been hearing from your parents or telling yourself that are true about yourself for years that don't actually have any validity in reality, and dismantling them and starting to actually embody a different version of yourself.
Word. Yeah, it's definitely important to have a facilitator, because especially in the beginning, because it's so scary when you're not used to feeling your feelings, and you're not used to holding certain dense energies in your body, and like making it okay to be so uncomfortable that you feel like you're going to die, but you're not going to die. That takes practice. And it's definitely easier when there's someone holding your hand through the process and holding space for you and letting you know, like, hey, this is just temporary. This is old stuff. We're clearing it out. We're letting it go. We're moving forward. This is you processing. Like, you feeling like this is actually progress. This is not regression. Because I think it's easy for people to start to do this type of work and then feel like, oh my God, I'm miserable. I'm not happier. I'm not high vibing. I'm not feeling better. But it's like going through the drudgery on the other side is where the freedom is. And it's having the courage to be so uncomfortable in your body, to look at the thoughts and beliefs and stories and narratives and things that happen to you. And from there, you can become so free and not scared of anything. Because as soon as you're not afraid to feel, you don't have to live your life trying to avoid certain feelings. You're just like, I can feel anything, so I can make any choice that I want. Boom, freedom.
It's so funny. I was just, telling you ladies before the call that my 5-year-old was up all night throwing up. And I remember, this is just calling me back to last night, because he would go to throw up and then he wouldn't. And he would just sit there with his hand, with his, like in a yoga, like meditation pose, and be like, please don't throw up. Please don't throw up. And he just hated it. Like the feeling of waiting to do it is so much worse. And then when it's over, it's like, oh my God, I feel like $1 million. And it's reminding me of that so much because I kept telling him like, don't worry, you're never going to have to do this throw up ever again. This is the only time. And then you're going to feel so great. And I just remember like, that's exactly how the shit feels. It is exactly like you're hugging the toilet. You're like, this is how I'm going to be forever. And then when it's over, you're like, oh my God, I love myself. Or, oh my gosh, that's actually, I feel the weight lifted off of me. I feel like this trauma,
Relief.
this limiting belief, this belief that I've had is finally able to be released because I threw it up.
I threw it up.
You guys, I am so sorry. I locked my husband out of the house and
You got to go get him.
let him in. Yeah, I'm
Please
so
let him
sorry.
in.
I'm such
Poor husband.
That's
I'll be right
hilarious.
back.
Please go
No
let him in.
worries. That's funny. We'll
Oh my
continue
gosh.
the conversation.
Yes.
Live on High Vibe.
Kelsey, I just
you never know what's gonna happen. You what?
I just miss your face. I just need to
I
see your
know.
face.
I miss my face. I
Ugh.
can't see it either.
I know it's like throwing me off, but anyway, yeah, I think that when we talk about this all the time, you have to be able to let yourself feel it. That is the courage. That is the bravery that we talk about when we say, feeling is healing. That it's not for the weak. It's not for the weak. You have to be willing, And the hard thing is feeling it and thinking that it's always going to be this way and then piecing out, which a lot of people do. They're just like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Right. That sucked. Never mind.
But it's so worth it. Anyway, we're just saying how it's worth it to actually feel your feelings. Oh yeah. Go Kelsey. You tell us yours.
Yeah. I was just going to say, in my experience, it's always worth it to feel it.
Oh yeah.
And like, I remember when I first became familiar with my emotional body and I stopped suppressing how I was feeling. This is probably like in my late teens, early 20s. And I've always been sensitive, but I never allowed myself to express that. So it all came up at once. And I was going through a lot of pain and heartbreak and grief and sadness and depression and anxiety. And I literally in those moments was kind of feeling like I was going to die, but also feeling like I was getting lighter and like more free with every scream, with every tear, with every outburst, with every passing moment, just spending time with those feelings unconditionally and not making it wrong to feel how I felt. I was just like, dang. And then on the other side, I was like, oh, I'm having Kundalini awakening. I'm psychic. All this stuff is happening to me. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And it happens in phases. It's never ending. Like, it's not like I just went through that one process and I'm done. Like, I've probably had, I would say, if we're going to label it in spiritual terms, like 2 dark nights of the soul. And just even like today, I'm not going through a dark night of the soul, but I'm processing a lot. I don't know about you guys, but I think when you're in a transitional period, it can just be a lot.
Well, and that's, I think for me, what made me realize that Alyse is a legit magician, because when we work together, I don't know that I necessarily, and I think a lot of people feel this way, but I don't necessarily feel like it was lifted immediately in the moment. I truly believe that the deepest change is going to be integral. It's going to be little by little until one day you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't feel this way anymore. I should be feeling this way, or I used to feel this way. And it's so easy. It used to be so easy. And now I just feel, XYZ. And that's what happened for me. So it may or may not be a secret, but I have this like weird relationship with, my business and abundance and the pressure of having to carry the household and knowing that it's just me making money can sometimes feel very, very heavy. And normally, I'm going to say, I would be like projecting, like I have to be prepared. I have to make sure that I do this and I do that. And I would like overdo it, and make sure that we weren't gonna, I don't know, in my head, lose our house and be homeless and like have to weird stuff. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, maybe not so weird, but that's how I felt. But after our session, I don't know if I even told you this. I probably didn't, at least, but right after our session, a couple days later, my husband, his contract was up for the client he was working with. And they couldn't justify keeping him on because they weren't getting enough clients. So he basically effectively was let go or like put on I don't know, put on hold, put on pause. And so I was like, normally I would immediately go into survival, fight, flight, and like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? What do I need to do? And like stress myself out. But he told me that. And I was like, okay, we're good. I got this. And I was so, Kelsey, you know me. Okay. This is weird for me, but I still am waiting. It might sound weird, but I'm still kind of waiting for my mind to catch up with that and be like, no, we should be freaking out. But it just hasn't happened. I feel so zen. I feel so like we're going to be fine. We have always been supported. And that is like, if we as humanity could always feel supported and like we were being taken care of, you know, that saying the universe has your back. If we could always tap into that feeling, oh my God, like what else do you want? So I just feel like if nothing else, which of course there's more to our session. Yes, of course. But I listened to the recording that you so wonderfully gave me. And I listened to it again and I was like, yeah, I feel great. I really do. And it hasn't gone back. And I really don't think it will, because I really feel like a huge shift happened. And that is huge for me to say, because it's not like I'm not skeptical by any means, but I just feel like, well, it's me though that we're talking about, you know. It's so easy to help other people, but when it's you, you're like, oh, it's me. So it's probably not gonna, but I swear you are the real deal. And if I can say anything to the listeners, it would just be, I feel supported. I feel like I'm going to be supported and taken care of. And I really do feel like it's a direct result of you helping me release the nonsense that was trapped in my body.
Well, thank you. That makes me really happy to hear. And, I think just, to elaborate on that and maybe to explain a little bit of why, what I'm doing works and why you feel that way is, I think for me, one of the gifts that I have is to be able to really pinpoint and get underneath of what's really going on. Cause we really went there, and I know you probably weren't expecting it.
No, I was like, tell me about my past lives.
And I'm like, there's nothing to know about your past lives. We're talking about this life.
Yeah.
But,
gosh.
But the reason why I can do that is because it's just in my nature. I'm a Scorpio. Like I will get to the very bottom of it and I won't stop until I do. So I think because I was able to get to the very bottom of it for you and pinpoint that, then we just do the energy work to clear it. Right. So it's actually pretty simple. I mean, I know it doesn't seem simple, but as long as we can get to the root, and then, and then I do the energy work to shift it, then something really, really clears, because we were able to get to the bottom of it, of where this all started. And, of course, other things come up and other things surface as we grow 100%. Yeah. But I think this survival mode kind of thing that you were in based on your past, we were able to really pinpoint that and where it started and what that energetic was. And then we just cleared the energy.
Yeah. In a way that like I've never been able to do before, truly, because I've tried, I mean, I am a hypnotherapist, right? Like I love doing this for people and getting to the root source of what's going on. And even self-hypnosis with like, I just need somebody to say to me what I would say to a client. Like that's all I need. And I hadn't been able to find it until you came along. So thank you so much for being what I needed. And we all kind of become the person that we needed. Isn't that true? I think that you became, that person that so many people needed. And I definitely became the person that I needed as a kid. And thank God for you, just even as just a school counselor, because I can remember, I think I told you this many times, that the school counselor at whatever school I was at was like an earth angel for me. And for a lot of, and I know you are that for a lot of kids, people are going to think about you when they're adults and be like, oh, I'm so glad she was there when she was there, because that's how I think of my school counselor. So that's just a completely off topic, but I needed you to hear that because it's very important.
Thank you.
I'm waiting for you, Kels.
Oh, I'm just listening. I'm just
I
along for
know.
the ride.
I
I'm
really
just,
don't want to
like,
hog this one, but I can't see
hanging
you, so
out
it's
in the
throwing me off.
background today. But yeah, I guess to kind of sum up what we've been talking about, get some support,
Yeah.
feel your feelings. It's going to be okay. And it's going to be even better because when you move towards relief and you clear these dense energies, there's a lot of juicy goodness. Basically, everything you've ever wanted is like on the other side. So,
Yeah.
not to overgeneralize, but I think it's pretty safe to say that.
Well, the way that it was told, the way that I kind of told it to myself is I didn't get to where I'm at because of the trauma or the pain. I got here in spite of the trauma and the pain. So imagine, anybody listening who's like, well, I'm fine. Imagine where you could be. Imagine what you could do if this is what you've been able to do with the limits, the baggage, the whatever you want to call it, then imagine what you could do without it. And it's a freaking game changer. I'll tell you that much.
Hey there, we hope you're enjoying this episode so far, but if you want to listen to the whole thing, we're going to invite you over to our podcast. Either search for High Vibing It on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys listen to podcasts, or even better, if you want to watch the extended video version of this episode that's even longer than the actual podcast itself, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/highvibe. Lindsay, tell them what's awesome about the Patreon.
Patreon is where we have all of our extended episodes. As Kelsey said, we have it on video, so you can actually see the things that we're talking about. Sometimes we have visual aids, and it's nice to know what we're talking about. We also have hangouts that we do sometimes that are exclusive to Patreon people. And you can get started with all of this and bonus content and everything that we have only for the Patreon people for as little as $3. I think it's $3.33 a month. And that's it. And you guys can get all the benefits and all access to everything that we put in there. Really cool.
It's really cool, really fun, super easy to join. And you guys don't even have to do that to finish this episode. If you're like, screw it, I don't want to pay any money, I just want to hear the rest of this episode, go to our podcast, High Vibing It, search for it wherever you listen. It's totally free. Either way, enjoy the rest of the show wherever you choose to enjoy it. And we will see you guys next week because we do a new one every week. Adios.
Bye.